Liberty and Property by Ludwig von Mises. Chapter 3. What vitiates entirely the socialist economic critique of capitalism is their failure to grasp the sovereignty of the consumers in the market economy. They see only a hierarchical organization of the various enterprises and plans, and are at a loss to realize that the profit system forces businesses to serve the consumers. In their dealing with their employers, the unions proceed as if only malice and greed were to prevent what they call management from paying higher wage rates. Their short-sightedness does not see anything beyond the doors of the factory. They and their henchmen talk about the concentration of economic power, and do not realize that economic power is ultimately vested in the hands of the buying public, of which the employees themselves form the immense majority. Their inability to comprehend things as they are is reflected in such inappropriate metaphors as industrial kingdom and dukedoms. They are too dull to see the difference between a sovereign king or duke who could be dispossessed only by a more powerful conqueror and a chocolate king, who forfeits his kingdom as soon as the customers prefer to patronize another supplier. This distortion is at the bottom of all socialist plans. If any of the socialist chiefs had tried to earn his living by selling hot dogs, he would have learned something about the sovereignty of the customers. But they were professional revolutionaries, and their only job was to kindle civil war. Lenin's ideal was to build a nation's production effort according to the model of the post office, an outfit that does not depend on the consumers because its deficits are covered by the compulsory collection of taxes. The whole of society, he said, was to become one office and one factory. He did not see that the very character of the office and the factory is entirely changed when it is alone in the world and no longer grants to people the opportunity to choose among the products and services of various enterprises. Because his blindness made it impossible for him to see the role the market and the consumers play under capitalism, he could not see the difference between freedom and slavery, because in his eyes the workers were only workers and not also customers. He believed that they were already slaves under capitalism, and that one did not change their status when nationalizing all plants and shops. Socialism substitutes the sovereignty of a dictator or committee of dictators for the sovereignty of the consumers. Along with the economic sovereignty of the citizens disappears also their political sovereignty. To the unique production plan that annuls any planning on the part of the consumers corresponds in the constitutional sphere the one-party principle that deprives the citizens of any opportunity to plan the course of public affairs. Freedom is indivisible. He who has not the faculty to choose among various brands of canned food or soap is also deprived the power to choose between various political parties and programs, and to elect the office holders. He is no longer a man, he becomes a pawn in the hands of the supreme social engineer. Even his freedom to rear progeny will be taken away by eugenics. Of course the socialist leaders occasionally assure us that the dictatorial tyranny is to last only for the period of transition from capitalism and representative government to the socialist millennium in which everybody's wants and wishes will be fully satisfied. Once the socialist regime is sufficiently secure to risk criticism, Ms. Joan Robinson, the eminent representative of the British Neo-Cambridge School, is kind enough to promise us even independent philharmonic societies will be allowed to exist. Thus the liquidation of all dissenters is the condition that will bring us what the communists call freedom. From this point of view we may also understand what another distinguished Englishman, Mr. J.G. Crowther, had in mind when he praised Inquisition as beneficial to science when it protects a rising class. The meaning of all this is clear. When all people meekly bow to a dictator, there will be no longer any dissenters left for liquidation. Caligula, Torquemada, Robespierre would have agreed with this solution. The socialists have engineered a semantic revolution in converting the meaning of terms into their opposite. In the vocabulary of the Newspeak, as George Orwell called it, there is a term, the one-party principle. Now, etymologically party is derived from the noun part. The brotherless part is no longer different from its antonym. The whole, it is identical with it. A brotherless party is not a party, and the one-party principle is in fact a no-party principle. It is a suppression of any kind of opposition. Freedom implies the right to choose between assent and dissent. But in Newspeak it means the duty to assent unconditionally, and strict interdiction of dissent. This reversal of traditional connotation of all words of the political terminology is not merely a peculiarity of the language of the Russian communists and their fascist and Nazi disciples. The social order that is abolishing private property derives the consumers of their autonomy and independence, and thereby subjects every man to the arbitrary discretion of the central planning board, could not win the suppress of the masses if they were not to camouflage its main character. The Socialists would have never duped the voters if they had openly told them that their ultimate end is to cast them into bondage. For exoteric use they were forced to pay lip service to the traditional appreciation of liberty.